In 1348, in a silent chamber just outside Florence, a nun lay pinned beneath candlelight. Her name was Sister Caterina Duzzi, and for 19 unbroken hours she did not pray, she screamed. Not because she was dying, but because surgeons were removing her skeleton piece by piece while she remained fully conscious. And the most disturbing truth is this: she paid them to do it. The witnesses who stood around her weren't executioners, they were learned men, physicians, theologians, and scholars, each convinced they were watching an act of holy purification. Across her trembling body, they mapped the human form as if it were a living scripture. Every incision, every exposed nerve, every bone lifted from her flesh was recorded with clinical devotion. But the horror unfolding in that chamber did not begin with Caterina. It began with the world collapsing outside its walls. Europe was choking under the Black Death. Corpses filled the streets faster than they could be buried. And as millions died, medicine faced a crisis no surgeon could solve. The Catholic Church had forbidden dissection of the dead. To cut open a corpse was to risk excommunication. So a new doctrine emerged, quietly, secretly, monstrously. If the dead could not be studied, study the living. And in the chaos of plague-stricken Florence, this idea found fertile ground inside a circle of devout believers who saw physical agony as a ladder to salvation. They called themselves the Seekers of Sacred Agony. And Sister Caterina, a respected woman of faith, would become their masterpiece and their ruin. The men who prepared Caterina's body believed they were performing something sacred. They called it anatomia viva, living anatomy. It was a method designed to extract knowledge the church had forbidden, carried out on a breathing, conscious human being whose suffering they interpreted as divine offering. The technique was brutally simple. Tourniquets were tightened until the limbs blanched white. Incisions were carved along the fingers, wrists, arms. Bones were removed one by one, carefully cauterizing the exposed vessels with red-hot iron. Honey and wine were packed into the wounds to prevent infection. It was medieval surgery pushed past its absolute limit, performed without opium, without wine, without even the mercy of unconsciousness. And yet, to the men standing over her, none of this was cruelty. It was revelation. Outside the monastery, the Black Death was burning through Europe. Physicians were desperate, plague treatments were failing, and every missing piece of medical knowledge translated directly into lives lost. But with the Catholic Church condemning post-mortem dissection, scholars were trapped in ignorance. Anatomia viva became the loophole, a forbidden practice hidden behind religious devotion. And Caterina, convinced that enduring unimaginable pain would carry her soul directly into heaven, offered herself as the perfect subject. Her brother, the surgeon Mondino de Uzi, hesitated, but scientific ambition and pressure from the faithful won. And together they would create a procedure that medical students would whisper about for centuries. If you believe history's darkest secrets should be remembered, subscribe to the Crimson Archive.
Protocol 7 began at dawn. Within the first hour, her distress was labeled baseline. Within 3 hours, she was begging. Every plea was categorized, timed, and measured. Her suffering became a chart. By hour 14, nurses could hear her from down the corridor, even through soundproofing. One wrote in her diary that she prayed in the chapel afterward, ashamed she could not stop it. A resident questioned the cruelty. The lead doctor answered, "Humanitarianism doesn't advance science." Day 2. Her words began collapsing into broken fragments. Clinical notes reduced it to non-lexical vocalizations. She was losing language, but not consciousness. That was the goal. Day 3, a nurse attempted to administer morphine in secret. She was caught and fired. On her way out, she passed the patient's family in the waiting room. She told them their wife and mother was responding to treatment. Behind the door, Helen had been screaming for 60 hours. Day 4, nurses arriving for shift change believed she had died. Her body barely moved. Then they heard a faint, inhuman sound, the last remnants of a voice crushed by endurance. Her eyes remained open. She was aware, trapped in silence. The lead researcher was thrilled. He noted the moment language failed as unprecedented. He ordered the experiment extended. 3 nurses filed formal complaints. The hospital dismissed them. The protocol was approved. Their job was to observe and document. One by one, the nurses quit, but not before they were forced to continue the procedures, tests to verify pain response, which meant inflicting more stimuli on a woman who could no longer speak. Day 5, she stopped making any sound at all. Physicians switched to physical tests, reflex, blood pressure spikes, eye tracking. Her eyes eventually stopped following movement. Day 6, the first nurse walked out, breaking her contract. Day 7, the second. Day 8, the last nurse broke down when told the experiment would be prolonged for unique post-verbal opportunities. Her family, 30 feet away, was told she needed rest. Near the end of the week, her husband demanded to see her. The hospital sedated her for the first time, not to relieve suffering, but to hide it. He saw his wife unconscious and believed the doctor's reassurances. Once he left, they reversed the sedation and continued. Day 9, her vital signs began to falter. Only then did the lead doctor recommend ending the procedure to prevent permanent damage, as though 9 days of structured agony had not already done that. The moment the experiment ended, they administered morphine because the data collection phase was complete. For 6 more days, they observed how her mind tried to crawl back from the edge. How long until she spoke? Would she remember? Could the psyche reassemble after prolonged torture without sedation? A psychiatric consultant wrote she showed signs consistent with sustained torture. A line recommending legal counsel was crossed out. When she was discharged, the paperwork called it experimental therapeutic intervention. The family never learned the truth during her life. Helen lived 21 more years. She never fully recovered. Every doctor's appointment haunted her. The research team, meanwhile, celebrated the results.
For 6 more years, Sister Katerina remained alive, if survival is the right word. With no arms, no legs, and no bones in her limbs, she lived suspended in a specially constructed wooden frame that held her upright like a fragile relic. She could no longer speak. The surgeries had damaged her jaw. But she could blink. And with that single motion, she answered the questions of the faithful who lined up to see her. The monastery displayed her as a living miracle. Pilgrims paid for a glimpse. Clerics whispered about her endurance. Students came to study her condition. No one saw the woman, only the myth they had created around her. The frame that held her still exists today in Florence, mislabeled as a medieval disability support device. Its true purpose is absent from the plaque, intentionally. Mondino's story continued far from Europe. Forced into exile, he crossed into Constantinople and eventually settled in Cairo, where his surviving notes became the backbone of future surgical technique. Techniques that would eventually find their way back into Europe generations later. But the legacy that mattered most came in 1352. Pope Clement VI, horrified by the growing cult around Katerina and the chaos that followed the aborted procedure, issued a sweeping ban.
anatomia viva was declared a violation of divine law, and all forms of dissection without consent were outlawed. Though the Church never admitted it openly, the ban was written because of one woman. Her agony became the first foundation stone of modern medical ethics. Today, every consent form you sign before surgery echoes her legacy. Every right you have to stop a procedure, to withdraw permission, to understand the risks, began with the moment Katerina whispered, "I want to live." And yet, a darker truth survives in Mondino's final writings. Katerina had believed that pain would free her soul from the prison of her body, but her reactions during nerve dissection revealed something else, something neither one of them expected. Her consciousness, her sensations, her very sense of self, all followed the pathways of flesh and nerve. There was no separation, no divine transcendence, only physiology. She sought to prove she was more than her body, but proved only that we are nothing without it. Every time you hear a surgeon explain a procedure, every time you initial beside a line labeled "informed consent," you are living in the shadow of Sister Katerina Duzzi. But here is the question that lingers, the one history refuses to answer. If you had been in that cathedral, surrounded by authority, scripture, and spectacle, would you have walked out